I'm going to start out with doing some introductions of the staff and the project team, just so you know who people are. And then I'll talk a little bit about the format of tonight, and then we'll go from there. But I'm Dan Stuckey, I'm the city engineer for Carson City. This is Dan LeBlanc, he's with Sierra Nevada Construction, who is going to be the contractor on this project. Christian Heinbach over there, if you could just raise your hand when I introduce you. Christian Heinbach, he is with Kimley Horn and Associates, he's a design engineer, and he's doing the design of the roundabout at Stewart Street, which we'll talk about. Tom Grundy, who's with Carson City, he's the project manager for this project, and he'll be the main contact moving forward. Let's see, we've got Rachel Schneider from IT, she helps with all of our communications and public outreach. Dirk Goring, he's our senior transportation planner. Ben Fish is another consultant, he's with Design Workshop, and he is a landscape architect, so a lot of the landscaping is from him. We've got Emma Crossman in the back, she's also with Sierra Nevada Construction, and she's the lead project manager on the construction side for this project. We have Lucia Maloney, she's our transportation manager for the city. We have Carissa Moffitt, she's our bicycle and pedestrian coordinator for Carson City. And I think that's it. So we'll go ahead and get started. So kind of the plan for today is, it's been a while since we've been out in the public for this project. I know a lot of you are, remember, maybe when it was first starting to get talked about, but we wanted to get people excited again about the project, talk about schedule a little bit, talk about the project features, and also give you guys some different tools that you can stay connected through design and construction, and then get feedback from you guys as well. So we're going to do about a 20-25 minute presentation, and I know most of you have kind of gone around and looked at the various exhibits and talked with staff, but we'll also have time afterwards where you can talk individually with staff, and we'll also have a question forum afterwards where you can talk in front of everybody as well and ask questions. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. If there's questions that happen during the presentation, we can talk about them then, or you can just save them for the end. So I want to start out with a little project background on where we've been and kind of where we are today moving forward. I also want to make an announcement. Construction, we're still a year away. I know sometimes we have these meetings and people get really excited like we're going to tear up your street tomorrow. We still have a lot of time. So we're at about the 30% design level. So I wanted to make that known. But anyway, 2014, this is when, even before that date, this project was it was at a conceptual level, we were starting to develop it. But 2014 is when it was made official. This is when the Board of Supervisors approved the plan of expenditures for our facility and corridor projects. And so since then, we've done the MAC, Animal Shelter, downtown Carson Street, downtown Curry Street, and this was always the plan to move on to South Carson Street after Curry Street was done. In 2016 and 2017, hopefully some of you were a part of this, but we did do a corridor study back then. There was 2 public outreach meetings during that time where big turnouts like this, I think there was about 100 people plus or minus at those meetings as well. And at those meetings, a lot of the design that you see here today was actually voted on at those meetings. We put up some some different alternatives, different street cross sections, and you as the public were able to vote on what you liked. So a lot of that feedback back then was inputted into our design, what you see today. Big news, in April 2018, the Carson City received a Tiger grant, which is a very highly competitive federal grant. And as you can see, $7.57 million, so it was a really big win, and this allowed us to complete the entire corridor, so basically from 5th Street all the way to about Appion Way. This is a big win. I think there was about 950 applications submitted, and they selected, I think, 25 to 30 winners. So if you do the percentage there, it's pretty low probability, but our project really stood out. So that was a huge win for the city. July, August, we assembled the design team and kicked off design. And then that really takes us to where we are today. But October, November, we did do some public outreach. Groups of about 6 of this design team went out and met with individual business owners along the corridor. We gave some contact information, talked a little bit about the project there. And then we just completed the 30% design in late October, and then we did present in front of RTC for 30% approval, and we'll also be going to the Board of Supervisors here next week for final approval of the 30% design. So that's where we are today. So a little bit about project. On all of these corridor projects, you guys have probably heard the term complete streets, but that's really the basis of this project as well. And what that means is providing a street for everyone. So that means motorists, that means pedestrians, that means cyclists. So providing opportunities for every one of those users to get around the corridor. So that's really what this project is about. But there's also some significant components that I want to just highlight as we move forward here. Storm drainage improvements. I know that area, there's been historical flooding around that corridor. We put a pretty significant investment, almost $3 million in storm drain infrastructure with this project that's going to go in to hopefully lessen some of those drainage issues within that area. Landscaping, there's a significant amount of landscaping to help beautify that corridor proposed with this project, and you can see, I mean, we're still early in the design, but you can see some of those landscaping areas when you look at the exhibits here. Multi-use path, this is a really major component of this project. Along the east side of the corridor, we'll have a 12-foot multi-use path. So that was one of the voted on features back in 2016 and 2017. Enhanced business access, this is one of the major key parts of this project. There's about, I did a rough approximation, there's about 4,000 linear feet of raised concrete median between Kuntz and Colorado Street on the existing corridor. Much of that will get removed with this project, and there'll be a center dual turn lane for much of the corridor. So people will be able to maneuver around that corridor much better than what they can today, be able to get to the east and west side of the street and visit those various businesses. So that was a big, I know, positive for the business owners along that corridor. Street lighting, we'll be doing some new street lighting along that corridor. Some of it will be decorative street lighting. ADA enhancements, so these are upgrades to ramps to make them compliant with the American Disabilities Act. Some new driveway aprons and some sidewalks to make them compliant as well. A roundabout at Stewart Street, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Illuminated pedestrian crossing, so we're proposing at 2 different locations. You'll have an opportunity to vote and give feedback on a preferred location of one of those illuminated pedestrian crossings tonight. But we're proposing 2 of those in the corridor. And then, like I mentioned, utility improvements beyond just storm drainage. We have significant water infrastructure improvements as well as sewer, and then also some critical fiber optic lines in that corridor as well. So as I mentioned, this was back in 2016 and 2017. The public had an opportunity to vote on what they wanted to see out there. These are the preferred alternatives and what you see in the design today. So I'm just going to kind of start with this. This is the street cross section that's being proposed from Snyder to Stewart. In this, you can see what there will be. There'll be 2 northbound travel lanes, 2 southbound travel lanes, and then that shared center turn lane. You'll have a bike path on the west side of the corridor. So this is southbound bike lane. Here you have a landscape buffer, which will separate the road from the multi-use path that will run on the east side of the corridor, and then, of course, the sidewalk on the very east side of the corridor. Here's the section from Snyder to Stewart, so same sectage, but this is where the frontage road is included. So really the only thing that's different about this is the frontage road. There's not a lot of improvements proposed on the frontage road. For the most part, it's going to remain and function like it does today. But there's a few little modifications that we are implementing that will hopefully make it function even better, as well as some ramp and sidewalk improvements. But for the most part, there's not a ton of improvements happening there. And then the last section, this is slightly modified from the preferred alternative. What's different now is you don't have these landscaping buffers here. And that was because we did further traffic analysis and we determined that we needed 2 southbound travel lanes. So because we had to add another travel lane in on the southbound direction, it took away we just didn't have enough space to add those landscaping buffers. However, we will still have a northbound and southbound bike lane, and this is from Stewart to 5th. And a lot of, on the east side of the South Carson along this section, there will be wider sidewalks and some of those bulb areas that you see in downtown Carson Street. So there will be some enhancements there. So this is just a little summary of our public outreach in October, and this is obviously beyond what we did in March 2016, or in 2016 and 2017. Went out, met with about 250 businesses along the corridor. We discussed basically what I've talked to you about today. Some of the project features is also timeline moving forward and some of those communication tools, which I'll talk about at the end of this presentation. Majority of the businesses that we spoke to were very positive about the project, which was really refreshing to hear. And a lot of them, you know, the enhanced business access for them was a key part, but also a lot of them mentioned that, you know, they wanted something. This corridor is no longer a state highway, and they didn't want it to be treated like a state highway. They wanted, you know, to beautify it somewhat and treat it more like how it functions today, which is a highly productive commercial corridor. Some of the comments I just want to address that we received when we were out there. Obviously, there was concerns about impacts during construction, and that, totally what we expect. One of the benefits of this project that I want to talk about and how I introduced Sierra Nevada Construction, Dan and Emma today. It's a different type of construction or project delivery method. It's called the CMARS, what we call a construction manager at risk, and it's where you have the contractor on board during the design stage. And really what this does is it helps during the construction stage, because the contractor, it's not a usual job where they don't see the plans until it's bid out. They're with us during design, and we're working out construction phasing. They're meeting with you all, hearing your feedback and concerns, and then we can implement that in the design, and also better strategize how we construct to have a lesser of an impact to you all during construction. So that's a key. Landscaping, one of the comments was, a lot of these businesses didn't want big, tall trees obstructing their business signage. So that is something that Ben Fish over at Design Workshop, we're incorporating that in the design, and anywhere where we have higher vegetation, we're going to strategically place that so it does not impact visibility to the signs along the corridor. So that is being worked out as we move forward with design. Pedestrian crossings, as we mentioned, many people wanted more safer spots to cross the road. Those will be incorporated in this project. The existing raised center medians that I talked about earlier, much of that is being removed and replaced with that center dual turn lane. At one point, we were looking at different locations of the roundabout across the corridor. Stewart was one of those. There was also some roundabout locations further in the south. Obviously, the auto dealerships there and some of the other businesses that have big delivery trucks that come through and deliver product, every day, every week. We're concerned about how a roundabout, if those trucks are able to maneuver. So they were actually relieved that the roundabout was moving further north to Stewart Street. But I do want to point out the roundabout at Stewart Street will be designed to handle those types of trucks. That isn't being incorporated when they design that roundabout. So it is being looked at. And then, one of the things it was kind of mixed, but traffic congestion. So some businesses were, hey, we've noticed a huge, since that freeway bypass was open there, we've noticed a huge reduction in traffic. And some people were still a little concerned. There is some lane reductions with this project, and they want to know how that's going to work. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in detail here. So this project was planned. They did modeling efforts, a while ago, and a lot of it was they were anticipating about a 40% reduction when that final leg of the freeway opened. We've done traffic counts. What you see here on this figure, these are daily traffic counts on South Carson Street around Coons Lane, so the south section, and they've basically hit right on and actually exceeded. There's been more of a reduction in traffic since the leg of that freeway has been open. About a 45% reduction south of Fairview that we've seen, and this is from, obviously, we've collected now data for about a year. The other section I want to talk about is the fit to Stewart. So this is north of Fairview. What kind of reductions have we seen there? And you can see on this chart here, with the opening of the William Street to Fairview portion back in 2009, there was about a 33% reduction in traffic volume. And then since the opening in 2017 of phase 2B of the freeway, there's been another 30% reduction. So the point is these roads are not seeing anything close to what they have seen in the past. The other thing I want to point out is, and this is a valid concern, people have talked about, okay, well, maybe now it functions, but how about in the future? There's going to be some build out and growth down there. Well, we have looked at this modeling not only today, but also in the 2040 scenario, which takes into growth and takes into where different developments are going to develop along the city and how that corridor is going to be used. And all the modeling has shown that it's going to function at a good level today and at a good level in the year 2040 as well. I know there's been concerns about there is some backing up that happens south near the interchange that happens. So the city's control, we don't have any control south of Appion Way. That's the Nevada Department of Transportation. One thing we do have some control over is signal timing. And so right now we're looking into optimizing the signal timing throughout that corridor to hopefully improve that area, because we know there is some backing up that happens during that PM peak hour. So that is something we're looking at. But as far as this project, there's no lane reductions. Full lane reductions really start happening north of Snyder. So we're really not touching anything down to that interchange. The roundabout. So I want to talk about some of the benefits of the roundabout. I know the roundabout's another thing, you know, and I'm obviously a driver too, and sometimes, you know, it's when a roundabout's there that you've never used before, there's some uneasiness there as a driver. But I want to talk about some of the benefits here and why the design of this roundabout is going to make it a fairly easy roundabout to navigate. So one thing with roundabouts, this roundabout, it's going to increase traffic efficiency. So we've modeled it not only in the 2040 PM peak hour scenario, and it still functions at either higher level or equal level to how that intersection functions today, but you also got to think about hours that are not the peak hour, where people right now are just sitting at a light during the middle of the day when there's no traffic. With this roundabout, you're just going to get right through and go and move. It's going to be continuous and it's going to be efficient. The safety, this was a big reason why we have the roundabout, is the safety. We anticipate, we've modeled this, Kimley Horn uses some industry standard methodology to kind of quantify what those safety reductions are. So what this does is we anticipate a 50% reduction in traffic collisions. And what that is on a societal cost savings, now this includes vehicle damage, property damage, medical bills, all that kind of stuff. We anticipate about a $2.8 million savings over about a 20-year period. So, you know, we're going to save money well into the future on this. What I talked about here on the easier to navigate is it's a single lane roundabout. So I don't know if you guys can see this very well, but afterwards, please go over and look at that. But what you'll see here is there's really, there's a bypass lane here that moves around if you're heading southbound. You just bypass the roundabout, you don't even go through it. Here, once you're in the roundabout, there's only one lane. It's not a multi-lane roundabout, which I know sometimes is troublesome to maneuver. So we think the design here is going to be very easy to navigate. And then the last thing is it's going to serve as kind of a transition point to go from a very busy commercial corridor to start to transition more into a downtown type feel north of that roundabout. We're proposing some really nice landscaping features from an aesthetics point of view, and then also some sculptural elements probably in the roundabout as well, which I'll talk about with this slide here. So these are just some ideas that design workshops coming up. We're going to be working with an artist to design some sort of feature that will go, kind of a gateway feature that will go in the middle of the roundabout and add a nice finishing touch there. So this is the fun part. Design Workshop has created a 3D flyover along the corridor. It's about a 4-minute video. I'm going to go ahead and play it. I might talk a little bit, trying to highlight some things as we go. But I'm going to start that video right now. So we're starting at 5th Street and heading south right now. So you can see there's some wider sidewalks, landscaping there on the left side of the street, the west side. And then here we're going to start having some of that stormwater infrastructure that I was talking about, some new catch basins, drop inlets to intercept some of that flow, and some larger storm drain pipe in the ground.
That's one lane going north to south?
Yes, and then the center turn lane there. So the Carson Mall is on the left-hand side of your screen there, so we're getting close here to the Roundabout at Stewart Street. And just so you all know too, we're gonna post, we'll post this video on our Carson Proud website. I'll talk a little bit more about that website at the end, but we're posting a lot of information, including all of our board and committee meetings, any conceptual plans, and we're gonna be doing updates as we move through design. So it's a great resource for all of you to go and get more information about the project. There's the Roundabout. So this is, you can see up there on the left side, that's the multi-use path there, and the landscaping buffer that's separating it from the roadway. And then this is where we get into that 2 northbound, 2 southbound, and then that center turn lane. A lot of that concrete median, you don't see it. We still have to put some in near the traffic signals just as a engineering design standard to make sure people aren't turning in at intersections where they're not supposed to be. And with that multi-use path, we're looking possibly at like some bench locations every once in a while, maybe near a tree where you can get some relief from the sun there. But we're not there at this point yet with the design. Sonoma Street. And one thing on this video that doesn't show is, I mentioned the street lighting. That's not shown on here, but we will have some decorative street lighting north of Stewart probably. And then we will have street lighting south of Stewart as well, but it might be more of the traditional type street lighting that you see, like the LED Cobra head type lighting. Of course, the landscaping, there's not going to be grass. It's going to be, low maintenance type landscaping, native vegetation there. Low maintenance type landscaping. So getting close here to the end of the project, Snyder. And here's where it opens really up to what you see today. So project funding here. So it's about 18.7 million is what we have in funding. You can see from about 7 different sources there. The bulk of it, about 75% of the funding is either coming from the Tiger grant or from the state. So these are funds that are transferred over from INDOT basically. But you can see there's the roughly 3 million in stormwater funds and then the water and sewer as well. We anticipate the estimated construction cost roughly around 17 million for this project. So schedule moving forward. We're on the different design milestones that we have. So we just got done with 30. 60% will be about January, February timeframe. April, May will be when we get to 90, and then final will be June or July. Public meetings, obviously today is the December 11th meeting, but we'll also, what we're looking forward to doing in February is reserving the permitting center downtown and reserving a room there. We'll have the project team probably for the entire day have plans laid out where people can come in, and if they want to talk specifically about certain parts of the project or in front of their business, they can sit down with the engineers and discuss that with them. Board and committee updates, so we'll be going to RAC, RTC, as well as the Board of Supervisors at all those milestones, so 30, 60, 90. December 20th, like I mentioned, so next week we'll go to the Board of Supervisors for a motion to approve the 30% design. January 7th, we'll go to the Historical Resources Commission meeting, and then you can see those 60 and 90% when we anticipate going back to the board. About a year from now is when we're going to start construction, and then the bulk of that construction will be probably about an 18-month process, but the bulk of that construction will happen in the year 2020. So here's the different communication tools. I know everybody likes to get their information in different ways, so we tried to provide those different avenues for people to get their information. You all know Tom Grundy. His contact information is on most of the stuff we hand out, but he's the primary contact for this project. carsonproud.com. If you haven't gone to that website, it's a great resource. We just did a bunch of updates last week for it. We have a text subscription service this year, which I find very helpful. If you basically text Carson Proud to 31996, it signs you up to automatically get updates through texting in the future. So this is a really good resource for people. Obviously social media, we put out stuff to Facebook and Twitter and all that. And then when we get to construction, which we're still a ways away, but when we get to construction, one thing we've incorporated with the other projects is we have a live construction map. And I'm hoping to make some enhancements for this project moving forward, but this shows you where the detours are, where the construction activity, so you can take a look before you head into town and kind of get a feel for what it's going to look like in that corridor. And then we'll also set up a construction hotline as we get closer to construction. So there's a number of different ways to stay connected. I wanted to talk about your opportunity to provide feedback today. So obviously any feedback you can give is great, but we do have a couple specific questions that we wanted you to all respond to if you can. As part of this project, we like to look at the impacts that the project might have to historical and cultural resources along that corridor, so from 5th to about Appion Way. So we're asking, part of this process is to ask the public if you know of any of those resources that might be within that right of way. So that question is on your sheet. If you could provide feedback, that'd be great. And then like we talked about, we're looking at the location of those pedestrian crossings there. And so we have a map over here sitting next to Tom where you can look. There's a couple different options there. If you want to add the option that you prefer, we would love to hear your feedback on that as well. And then any, like I mentioned, any other types of comments you want to give, we'd be happy to get those as well. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. We can talk right now in this forum, and you also have an opportunity after this to meet with individuals about the project and go over to the different boards.